Acme Products grows some more. So Susan says, look, we have way too many people for that first floor office. I want to move my marketing department upstairs. And so, hey, Joe, make that happen. So great. So he buys some new computers, and he goes out and he gets him another switch, just like the first one, and introduces it into the network. And so now, one switch is on the first floor, one switch is on the second floor. He moves some of the equipment up to the second floor switch. But now, my first floor devices aren't connected to the second floor. How do I connect them together? And he connects them together with a switch-to-switch connection called an uplink port. Now, you're going to see I've used white cables for my end devices. I'm going to start to use blue cables for my network connections. And so what I do here is I'm going to know that my switch has, as a feature of the switch, something called an uplink port. And you'll see here are my regular 24 Ethernet ports over here. Over here you'll see some special ports. And so these are uplink ports. I'm going to connect my cable here to one of those and to the other one. And now my network is complete again. I have one bigger local area network that now accommodates all the devices. Now this is one way to connect devices together. It's one way, but it might be a short-sighted way, because what we might have done here is that we might have created a bottleneck, and that blue cable maybe is the bottleneck. So let's say a user on the first floor wants to access some big file up on the second floor file server, and so do some others. Then the bottleneck is going to slow down, the network slows way down, and the reason is because of that probably 100 megabit connection that we've made between the two switches here. Now, uplink ports are a feature of a switch. Very important to understand what they are and that they're critical to being able to connect our networks together. We've talked about Category 5 cable. We've talked about UTP a few times. And we understand that UTP has a natural limitation of less than 100 meters. And we get that. And so we talk about Cat 5, you wonder, well, what about all the other categories? And there's a little chart for you on the screen there in your handout. Category 1 was where it all started. It was unshielded twisted pair, just like this, but it was for plain old telephone systems, POTS old phone systems. Very simple. IBM and Token Ring came along, and they allocated categories 2 and 4 to Token Ring cables. Do you know why Token Ring failed? It's because category 2 and 4 were crazy expensive cables. That's why, I think. Token Ring was probably a better technology than Ethernet. But Ethernet won out because they chose a very inexpensive cable. And the 10 megabits for Ethernet, they called category 3, Cat 3 cable. Of course, along comes 100 megabits. They tried to run 100 megabit cable, 100 megabit Ethernet on Cat 3 wire. Wouldn't work. It wasn't quite right. And so what they literally did was go back in and twist the cables a little more, a few more twists per inch, and you wound up with a better category of cable that could accommodate 100 megabits. And so, because 100 megabit Ethernet is the desktop standard, Cat 5 cable is the desktop standard these days. Along comes gigabit. We needed better. They twisted it more. We get Cat 5e, E for extended. Not sure why I didn't just go to 6, but I wasn't there. And so Cat 5e is gigabit Ethernet. Then they come up with Cat 6, which is really just a better version of Cat 5e. And then 6e is for 10 gigabits. You can actually run 10 gigabits on copper cable just like this. So there's Cat 5. And I'm limited to all sorts of things on Cat 5 here. But if I really had a problem with my bottleneck here, this blue cable has become a bottleneck, and I'm struggling. Do I have any options? And what I notice on the switch here is that there are some special ports. It's a special port called an SFP port. It stands for Small Form Factor Pluggable, SFP. And you'll see right beside the Ethernet port here, uplink ports, there are SFP. Now, if you look at that cable, you'll realize there are different kinds of connectors here, very dramatically different. This is a Cat 6e wire here between them. And I can now connect my switches together using those special ports, click those into place, and now I have a 10 gigabit connection between my switches, assuming the switch has 10 gig ports there. And so that's a very special kind of connection that now it's one way that I can overcome that speed limitation that I was having here with my Ethernet. But alas, Joe doesn't have quite that much technical expertise, and he's still going to run with our copper connection. Speed limitation that I was having here with my Ethernet. But alas, Joe doesn't have quite that much technical expertise, and he's still going to run with our copper connection.